The flower in the back just... Ghost? It's November. No more Halloween things. I'm just kidding. I'm very proud of this. There's 2 pieces of felt, and then I put a piece of cardboard in the middle, and I sewed it up, and then this is another piece of felt that I sewed on top of it. Then I got a 3D white marker. Recap of chapter 8? God, what day is it, man? Kyoshi wakes up in a hospital bed. Genju is there, and Genju's like, I knew you were hiding something, and she's like, she almost chokes on her water. But then he's like, you said you had a hard time bending small rocks, but you did not say that it was because you're really, really good at bending ginormous rocks. So she talks to Genju about a lot of stuff, and he's like, is there anything you want to tell me? And she's like, no. And he's like, okay. And then she goes to Yoon's room, and Yoon's like, pretty much everyone's fine. Like, we lost a few men, but everyone seems fine. And Kyoshi's like, great, everyone's gonna remember this. You're Avatar Yoon, Avatar Yoon. And Rangi's like, stop it. We know what you and Kelsang know. And Kyoshi's like, oh. And so both Yoon and Rangi are really mad at Kyoshi because they feel like she was hiding it, like, for, you know, to be mean or to be rude or to, like, want to be the Avatar herself. So they're really mad at her. And then she goes and visits Kelsang, and then she's mad at Kelsang for telling them. Shall we? I'm gonna drink some tea. Shout out to Uncle Iroh and Tinkerbell. Chapter 9. Desperate Measures. If she needed evidence, things were different now. The food was enough. On days when Kyoshi had time to eat breakfast, she usually helped herself to a bowl of juk from the communal pot bubbling away in the kitchen, garnished with whatever dried-out scraps from the upstairs tables Auntie Mui deemed fit to save from the previous night. Today, another servant surprised her outside her door and led her to one of the dining halls reserved for guests. The room she sat in by herself was so big and empty that drinking her tea made an echo. The grand zitan table held such an array of boiled, salted, and fried delicacies that she thought the place setting for one had to be a mistake. It was not. Without knowing which of the children under his roof was the Avatar, Genju seemed to have decreed that Kyoshi was to be fed like a noble until he figured it out. She tried to accommodate his generosity, but a small bite of each artfully arranged dish was all she could manage with her rice. Including, she noted with chagrin, the spicy pickled kelp she'd carried to the house herself, now nestled in a lacquered saucer. Her waiter checked back in. Is mistress finished? She asked with a bowed head. Rin, I went to your birthday party, Kyoshi said. I chipped in for that comb you're wearing. The girl shrugged. You're not to show up for work anymore. Master Genju wants you by the training grounds in an hour. But what am I supposed to do until then? Whatever mistress wishes. Kyoshi staggered out of the dining room like she'd taken a blow to the head. Leisure? What kind of animal was that? Relatable content, folks. Relatable content. Oh, man. I'm so tired. It's fine. She didn't want anyone to see her up and about the house. Oh, there's Kyoshi taking in the flowers. There she goes now, pondering the new calligraphy from the air temple. The prospect of being on display horrified her. In lieu of a better option, she ran to the small library where she'd spoken to Kelsang and latched the door behind her. She hid there, alone with her dread, until the appointment time came. Kyoshi was as unfamiliar with the flat stone expanse of the training ground, as she would have been with the caldera of a Fire Nation volcano. Her duties never brought her here. Genju waited in the middle of the courtyard for her, a scarecrow monitoring a field. Don't bother with that anymore, he said when she bowed deeply like a servant. Come with me. He led her into one of the side rooms. a supply closet that had been hastily emptied of its contents. Straw dummies and earthbending discs had been tossed without care outside, irking her sense of organization. Inside, Hadon waited for them. Yo, is she gonna firebend in this chapter? What's the name of the chapter? Desperate Measures. All right. Kyoshi, she said with a warm smile, thank you for humoring us. I know it's been a trying past couple of days for you. Kyoshi felt like there would be no end to the awkwardness. Despite her friendship with Rangi, she and the headmistress were more distant than she and Genju. Hadon was acting much friendlier than she'd expected, but Kyoshi looked down and noticed that the woman had been pacing trails in the dusty floor. Rangi often did that when she was upset. Stop, it's so cute. I'll help in any way I can, Kyoshi said, her throat feeling suddenly parched. Her tonsils stuck to the back of her tongue, causing her words to catch in her mouth. Sorry, that's my doing, Hadon said with a gentle laugh. I dried the air out in this room for an exercise. Please sit. There were 2 silk cushions borrowed from the meditation chamber on the floor. Kyoshi was horrified at the finery thrown on the dirty ground, but she took a position across from Hadon anyway. She was keenly aware of Genju standing behind her, watching like a bird of prey. We performed this test on newborns in the Fire Nation to see if they're capable of firebending. Oof, they do it on newborns? It might work. Hadon said, we have to know about our children quick, as you can imagine, or else they risk burning the neighborhood down, that's true. It was a joke, but it made Kyoshi more nervous. What do I have to do? Very little. Hadon reached into a pouch and pulled out what appeared to be a ball of tinder. This is shredded birch bark and cotton mixed with some special oils. She fluffed the material with her fingers until it was wispy and cloud-like. You just need to breathe and feel your inner heat. If the tinder lights, you're a firebender, and therefore the avatar. No one says that. That's just in italics. That's in Kyoshi's head. And therefore the avatar. You're certain this will work? Hadon raised an eyebrow. Newborns, Kyoshi. It's essentially impossible for a true firebender not to make some indication with this method. Now hush, I need to get a little closer to you. I'm so excited. I really hope that she firebends. Oh my god. She held the tinder puff under Kyoshi's nose as if she was trying to revive her with smelling salts. Relax and breathe, Kyoshi. Don't put effort into it. Your natural fire, your source of life, is enough. Breathe. Kyoshi tried to do as she was told. She could feel strands of cotton tickling her lips. She took in deep lungfuls of air over and over. I'll help you along, Hadon said after 2 minutes without results. The air around them grew hotter, much hotter. Trickles of sweat ran down Kyoshi's face, drying out before they reached her chin. She was desperately thirsty again. Just a tiny spark. Hadon sounded like she was pleading now. I've done most of the work. Let loose the slightest push. That's all I'm asking for. Your thumb on the scale. Kyoshi tried for 10 more minutes straight before she collapsed forward, coughing and hacking. Hadon crumpled the tinder in her fist. A puff of smoke drifted from between her fingers. It takes children, babies, a few seconds at most under these conditions, she said to Genju. Her voice was unreadable. Sorry, I read ahead. I keep doing that. Kyoshi looked up at the 2 masters. I don't understand, she said. Didn't Yoon already pass this test? Genju didn't answer. He turned around and stormed out of the room, slamming his fist into the frame as he left. The earthbending disc stacked by the door exploded into dust. Someone had seen Kyoshi coming and going from her new hiding place in the secondary library and ratted her out. No! There was no other way Yoon would have found her, curled up beside a medicine chest that had over 100 little drawers, each carved with the name of a different herb or tincture. Tincture? Tincture? Do you know this word?
Tincture.
Tincture? What does that mean?
A tincture of something isn't it like a few drops of something?
Oh, maybe.
A mixture?
She says it's a mixture. Okay. Thanks. This is why my mom helps me out and listens. 100 little drawers, each carved with the name of a different herb or tincture. Yoon sat down on the floor across from her, leaning his back against the wall. He scanned over the labels next to her head. It feels like way too many of these are cures for baldness, he said. Despite herself, Kyoshi snorted. Yoon tugged on a strand of his own brown hair, perhaps thinking ahead to the day he'd have to join the air nomads for airbending training at the northern or southern temple. They wouldn't force him to shave it off, but Kyoshi knew he liked to honor other people's traditions. And he'd still be good looking anyway. But then, maybe he would never get the chance, Kyoshi thought miserably. Maybe it would be stolen from him by a petty thief who'd burrowed into his house under the guise of being his friend. Kyoshi, no! Stop! He seemed to pick up on her swell of self-hatred. Kyoshi, I'm sorry, he said. I know you never meant for this to happen. Rangi doesn't. Saying it out loud made her feel ungrateful for his forgiveness. She could count on Yoon's easygoing nature and inability to hold a grudge. But if Rangi truly believed Kyoshi had wronged them, then there was no hope. It was clear. Kyoshi needed both of them in order to feel whole. Ugh! She wanted her paired set of friends put back into its original place, before the earthquake had knocked everything off the shelf. This state of not knowing they were trapped in was a plane of spiritual punishment, separating them from their old lives like a sheet of ice over a lake. Rangi'll come around, Yoon said. She's a person of faith, you know? A true believer. It's hard for someone like her to deal with uncertainty. You have to be a little patient with her. He caught himself and twisted his lips. What is it? Kyoshi said. Nothing. I was just acting like Sifu for a second there. The smile faded from his face. Yoon plunked the back of his head against the wall at the thought of Genju. It's him I'm really worried about. That seemed backward. The student anxious about the well-being of the teacher? I didn't realize it when I first met Sifu, but determining who should train the avatar and how is a cutthroat business, Yoon said. You'd think the masters of the world are these benevolent, selfless old men and women, but it turns out that some of them simply want to use the avatar's power and reputation to profit themselves. Genju had told her something similar in the infirmary, that whoever taught the avatar held immense influence over the world. Kyoshi regretted what she'd said to Kelsang the day before. He might have had reasons for wanting her to be the avatar, but material gain was certainly not one of them. It's especially bad in the Earth Kingdom, Yoon went on. We call the prominent elders sages, but they're not true spiritual leaders like in the Fire Nation. They're more like powerful officials with all the politicking they do. He held up his hands, comparing the clean one to the one stained with ink during the battle with Tagaka. The color still hadn't faded from his skin. That's partly why Sifu and I have been working so hard. The more good we do for the Four Nations, the less chance that another sage tries to take me away from him. I don't think I could handle having a different master. They would never be as wise or as dedicated as Sifu. Kyoshi looked at his darkened hand and wondered if she couldn't hold him down and scrub the ink off his skin. What would happen to the work you've done if... She couldn't finish the thought out loud. If it wasn't you, if it was me... That was in italics. She doesn't say that. That's in her head. Yoon took a deep, agonized breath. I think nearly every treaty and peace agreement Sifu and I brokered would become null and void. Ugh, I've made so many unwritten judgments. 2. If people found out that it wasn't the Avatar who'd presided over their dispute, and only some street urchin from Makapu, they would never abide by the outcome. Superb, Kyoshi thought. She could be responsible for the breakdown of law and order around the world and the separation of Yoon from his teacher. That was the worst prospect of all. For as long as she'd known him, Yoon had staunchly refused to talk about his blood relations. But the reverent way he looked at Genju, despite any arguments or bouts of harsh discipline, made it very clear. He had no one else. Genju was both his mentor and his family. Kyoshi knew what it was like to founder alone in the dark, grasping for edges that were too far away, without a mother or father to extend a hand and pull you to safety. The pain of having no value to anyone, nothing to trade for food or warmth or loving embrace. Maybe that was why she and Yoon got along so well. Where they differed, though, was how long they wallowed in sadness. Yoon sniffed the air and his gaze wandered until it landed on a porcelain bowl resting on top of the chest. It was filled with dried flower petals and cedar shavings. Are those fire lilies? He said, a wide, knowing grin spreading across his face. Kyoshi flushed beet red. Stop it, she said. That's right, Yoon said. The Ember Island tourism minister brought a bunch when he visited it 2 weeks ago. I can't believe you simply shred the flowers once they dry out. I can't believe you simply shred the flowers once they dry out. I guess nothing goes to waste in this house. Knock it off, Kyoshi snapped, but it was too hard keeping the corners of her lips from curling upward. Knock what off, he said, enjoying her reaction. I'm just commenting on a fragrance I've come to particularly enjoy. It was an inside reference that only the two of them shared. Yeah, I was like, what is he talking about? We're about to find out. Rongi didn't know. She hadn't been there in the gifting room 8 months ago, when Kyoshi arranged a vast quantity of fire lilies sent by an admiral in the Fire Navy, one of Heidan's friends. Yoon had spent the afternoon watching Kyoshi work. Against every scrap of her better judgment, she allowed him to lie down on the floor and rest his head in her lap while she plucked deformed leaves and trimmed stems to the right length. Had anyone caught the two of them like that, there would have been a scandal that not even the Avatar could have recovered from. The Avatar or the Avatar. Am I right? That day, entranced by Yoon's upside-down features, dappled with the flower petals she'd teasingly sprinkled over his face, she'd almost leaned down and kissed him. And he knew it, because he'd almost reached up and kissed her. What? They never spoke of it afterward. The shared impulse that had nearly crashed both of their carriages. It was too, well, they each had their duties, was a good way to put it. I'm losing my mind, you guys. That moment did not fit anywhere among their responsibilities. But since then, whenever the two of them were in the presence of fire lilies, Yoon's eyes would dart around the flowers repeatedly until he was sure Kyoshi noticed. She would try unsuccessfully to keep a straight face, the heat coloring her neck, and he'd sigh as if to mourn what could have been. I can't, this is so much. Today was no different. With a wistful blush on his own cheeks, Yoon stared her down until her defenses broke and she let out a giggle through her nose. There's that beautiful smile, he said. He pressed his heels into the floor, sliding up against the wall, and straightened his rumpled shirt. Kyoshi, trust me when I say this. If it turns out not to be me, I'll be glad it's you. He might have been the one person in the world who thought so. Kyoshi had to marvel at his forbearance. Her fears were unfounded. Yoon could still look at her and see a friend instead of a usurper. She should have believed in him more. We're late, Yoon said. I was supposed to find you and bring you to Sifu. He says he has something fun planned for us this afternoon. I can't, she said, out of ingrained habit. I have work. He raised his brows at her. No offense, Kyoshi, but I think you've pretty much been fired. Now get off that maybe Avatar rear of yours. We're going on a trip. In our favorite rocket ship to the sky. That's the end of the chapter. Wow. I can't. I don't know why Yoon and Kyoshi's little romance is hitting me so hard. But it is. It's so cute. Summary. So first of all, now they're all treating her different. So, yikes. But no one's mad at her, but like she doesn't eat like juk. Juk is what Iroh was making. Remember in Ba Sing Se? Like, what is that? It's juk. Like, I don't think you would like it. He's like, it smells great. Sorry. Anyways, she usually just like it's like porridge. She usually just has that for breakfast. But then now she's having like a private breakfast, and one of her friends is like serving her, and she's like, Rin, I literally went to your birthday party. Like, why are you bowing to me? And so then she does the firebending test that they do with firebending infants, where they put kind of a thing that's kind of, it's tinder and it's birch bark and cotton mixed with some special oils. And they put it under Fire Nation infants' noses. And basically, you're just supposed to breathe naturally. And if you're a firebender, it'll light up and flame. Safely, I guess. And so, but it usually happens in a few seconds, but Kyoshi did it for like 10 minutes and nothing happened. So Genju was like, ugh. And then Kyoshi's hiding out in the library because she has nothing to do. Because, like, Yoon said at the end of the chapter, she kind of got fired because she might be the Avatar, so she's not going to be a servant anymore. And Yoon finds her, and they're chatting about how Yoon is always trying to make things, like, fun and light. And she's like, and he's like, I'm sorry, I know this isn't your fault. You didn't want this to happen. And she's like, Rangi thinks I wanted it to happen. And he's like, she'll come around. They're just talking about, like, he's telling her, if it's you, it's fine. I really am okay with that. But also, like, all of the treaties I've done. Because she was like, what's going to happen to all of the treaties you've been doing this whole time? Like, he's going to be like, they're kind of going to be null and void if you're the Avatar. So, and then he's like, are those fire lilies? Because what had happened was, one time she was arranging a bunch of fire lilies that an admiral had sent to Hadon or something. And while she was doing that, Yoon was lying down on the floor with his head in her lap as she was arranging the petals. And apparently, she almost bent down and kissed him, and he almost bent up and kissed her, and they both know that the other one almost did that. And then they didn't. But now whenever fire lilies come up, he's always just like, so fire lilies? Like, oh boy. But then he does say it again. Like, he literally says, Kyoshi, trust me when I say this. If it turns out not to be me, I'll be glad it's you. And then he makes a joke out of it. No, now get up off that maybe Avatar rear of yours. We're going on a trip. Like, King Yoon. And that's the chapter. Short and sweet, unlike chapter 7. Jeez Louise. The next chapter is the spirit. Is she going to meet Korok for real this time? I'm exhausted. Looks like Yoon and Kyoshi have more in common than we thought. Yeah, because they're both like orphans and they lived on the street. When Genju is Yoon's Kelsong, it's true. That's exactly what I was thinking. Kyoshi is a bi queen. She's an icon, a true bicon, and an example to us all. I hope Kyoshi can keep her servant experience on her resume underneath Avatar. Oh, Lord. Out of all the Avatars, which one do you think is the strongest? Strongest, Kyoshi. And like, if kind of combining strongest, most powerful, like strongest in terms of bending, fully Kyoshi. Because she has split the earth. The magma. I've talked about this before. The plates. The magma, the plates. Like, she split the plates. And then even in a chapter, she's not even connected to her spirit, past lives. Maybe she is a little bit. But she wasn't even using that connection. And she went from the ocean floor, like, oh my lord. But Korra is in second in my mind. And then maybe Wan, since he was the first one. Girl, I don't even know. I also wish we had a Yang Chan story. Oh yeah, guys, you can also tell me about your Halloween costumes, how you did Halloween. In terms of like trick-or-treating, not trick-or-treating, social distancing with friends, Zoom. I was playing Dungeons and Dragons, Halloween themed, with my friends. And it's supposed to, it's like you tie it around your neck. Like this. And I was Jack Skellington! The next chapter is really good. It's on the same level as the iceberg chapter. The spirit. Yeah.
It's a whopper.
My mom says it's a whopper. Oh, God.
The iceberg on steroids.
That's what someone else said. My mom says the next chapter is like the iceberg on steroids. That is what oh God. Because I think I got a spoiler. I'm not going to say it. But I think I got a spoiler before I started reading. And I really hope that I read it wrong. But I don't think I did. I'm already sad about it. Kyoshi's like, leisure? What? I barely know her. And I'm like, me. Big mood. Hey, can we talk about how Hadon, it says, Kyoshi looked down and noticed that the woman had been pacing trails in the dusty floor. Rangi often did that when she was upset. That's so cute. I love whenever there are parallels whenever Kyoshi notices parallels between Hadon and Rangi. I love the whole thing of, we need to test Fire Nation babies for firebending. right away because if we don't, they could like blow up their houses. It's like, it's true. Kyoshi's thing where she's like, Yoon wouldn't have to shave his head when he went to the air nomads, but he probably would. And then she was like, he'd still be hot though. It's like, stop. It's okay. Can we read this? It was clear Kyoshi needed both of them in order to feel whole. She wanted her paired set of friends put back into its original place. Anyway, she needed both of them in order to feel whole. Oh! Every member of the Flying Opera Company is LGBTQ except Lek. I don't make the rules. I love that. Because I'm not far enough to really know who all is in the Flying Opera Company. I know it's going to be Kyoshi and Rangi and then other people. But I believe it. I support that, and I will probably say the exact same thing when I get to that part. What if the Avatar were twins and half Rappa was in Twin 1 and the other half was in Twin 2? That would be so cool. I just want to see Kyoshi see Mulan's reflection. Ooh, and like in Mandarin, maybe I should just do my Kyoshi outfit and be like, 为什么我却不能够成为好新娘伤了所有的人难道说我的人情伤了我 Ooh, a reverse of reflection where she's putting on makeup and not taking it off. Can somebody please do this? Because I do not have the makeup expertise to do this. It would be so cool. It would be like, 为什么我眼里看到的只有我 Like, oh, I would lose my mind. Yeah, the Avatar and the Fire Lord is such a good episode. Oh my god. I feel like I knew this, but I just thought consciously, I'm gonna message my friend after this and ask him what he thinks about it. And he's probably gonna be like, yeah, duh. The Avatar and the Fire Lord, you know, when you watch that episode, you're like, oh, by the Avatar they mean Roku, and the Fire Lord they mean Sozin. And you might even be like, yeah. But the Avatar and the Fire Lord, Aang and Zuko. The Avatar and the Fire Lord, Aang and Zuko. Wow, that made me emotional, and I don't know why. What if Katara posed as a boy to learn waterbending? That would be so... Oh, in the Northern Tribe? Oh, wait, what about not Katara, but just like someone else, like just a new story of a girl in the Northern Tribe who like dressed... Or maybe she's from the Southern Tribe. No, then she wouldn't need to. She's from the Northern Tribe. She dressed up as a boy to learn waterbending. I love it. Write it. Somebody write it. Micah! Micah, why are you even on my live stream if you're gonna yell about Korra not being good? Everyone go yell. I'm just kidding. I'm not. Fight. Why does everyone hate on Korra? She had some of the best character development I've ever seen. Go off. Korra is the first Avatar to learn metal bending. Go off. Korra doesn't deserve the hate. Go off. Micah trying to fight right now. I'll take on your whole army by myself. Whatever, man. No, I'm just kidding. Please be nice. Micah is my friend, guys. Please be nice. Do you think airbenders that got airbending by harmonic convergence can get airbending kids? I do think so. I've talked about this before. My theory for bending is that it's a genetic thing. We talked about it a bit. We haven't decided if it's probably like recessive, but like also kind of weird. Like it can just like show up sometimes. So I think when the harmonic convergence happened, I think that it messed with people's genes and like DNA. And so that now they have that gene for airbending. And so I think they can pass it on. I think that was the whole point. It was to help try to jumpstart the air nomads, like for the world to jumpstart it again. Bumi wasn't born with it. He couldn't airbend. He could only airbend with the, But you know what? That's true. Bumi might have had like the recessive gene and it wasn't turned on or something. That's possible. Zutara is a blue-red dichotomy, but they're both red personalities. It's true! They're just aesthetically blue and red, but they're both red, and that's why Zuka is superior. It's fine, I'm over it. Not everyone likes the enemies to lovers trope. I personally, as you can tell from me liking Zuka and Drary, I clearly like the enemies to lovers trope. I'm not gonna psychoanalyze myself this evening. I'm too tired to psychoanalyze myself this evening. Enemies to lovers doesn't always work. And it requires, if there are just rivals that neither of them are like bad guys and they're just kind of rivals, then no one really needs to be redeemed, and that's a bit different. But like if you're doing an enemies to lovers trope and like one of them has done really bad things, like they're gonna need a redemption arc and a good solid one before we can talk about it, you know? Like, and so like whenever I talk about Drary, like I'm talking about canon, like Drary in canon as well, but what I'm really talking about is the Drary in fanon that people have really worked on and written through and really developed, like his redemption arc and his, you know, search for forgiveness and peace and all of this good stuff. Aang had a hard time with earthbending. I think Katara had an easier job of metalbending, because think about, like I feel like, because you know, Aang was really good at waterbending because that's the next element in his cycle, whereas earth was the opposite element. And so he already had a hard time doing normal earthbending. I feel like metalbending would have also been hard because he's an airbender. Whereas Korra's a waterbender, so earth is her water equivalent for Aang. So I feel like she, you know, I feel like it's easier for her. I think there were wild bison that the Fire Nation didn't kill. So I don't really think Appa ended up having kids, but Appa did not have to repopulate the bison. Appa did not have to repopulate the bison of the world. First of all, great username, Sappho's friend. I wish I was Sappho's friend. High-key might learn ancient Greek just for the sole purpose of reading Sappho with my own two eyes. But shout out to translators everywhere. Draco, haha, wrong fandom. No, on these Kyoshi live streams, we talk about everything. Like, we start with Avatar, and that's where your questions come from, but as you can see, it kind of just goes into whatever land. Momo's story is, it hits you like a brah. Like, it's, I don't know what that means, it hits you like a brah. Basically, the whole time you're just like, oh, why is this the last one? All the rest of them were so powerful. Like, we're just watching Momo run around the city with these dogs and stuff. And then, well, and also, you know, we know Momo's sad about Appa. That part is moving as well. But at the end of Momo's, when he's just curled up on the ground holding Appa's fur, and it zooms out and you see Appa's footprint, and you're like, I have chills. I have goosebumps right now. And you're like, oh my God, he was so close. All right, folks. Hour 14. Perfect length. Okay. I'm ending. Bye, guys. Thanks for coming.